everybody. Today we're going to be checking out what is, without a doubt, the most incredible, amazing model train ever made in the history of the world. And of course, I'm talking about this guy right here. This is the Lionel 3-rail O-scale custom run Eric's Trains Appalachian Western ES44, and it's coming up right now on, well, it says it right here. I know that guy, Eric's Trains. Okay, all joking aside, this is the custom run ES44 that we had made last year in 2022. We sold about 150 of them, which was fantastic. It was so humbling and gratifying that there were so many people out there willing to spend their hard-earned money on one of these. The original price was around $630, so they weren't cheap. Although I did see one on eBay the other day selling for over $1,000. Now, I don't know if they're going to get that for it, but that's what they're listing it at. Anyway, because of the success of this, we were able to do 2 more custom runs this year. We're doing the NW2 switcher and a bay window caboose. Both of those will be arriving later this year. Anyway, I did a couple of videos on this last year. I did a video when it finally arrived at Legacy Station, and I showed it running for just a moment, but I never really did an in-depth video on it showing all the details and so forth, and so that's what we're going to do today. All right, so when it comes to doing a custom run locomotive like this, what you're really doing is a custom paint job, because underneath the paint job, this is just a standard Lionel ES44, just like any other ES44 you could buy from the catalog. And that's just the way it is. Whenever Lionel catalogs something like an ES44, they'll offer a bunch of different road names, but unless it's a Vision Line model or something, underneath the paint scheme, they're all the same. They have the same sounds, the same motors and everything. And literally what you're paying for in each case is a different paint scheme. And that's the case here. It would have been great if we could have done some custom sounds to go along with this custom run locomotive. But Lionel typically doesn't let you do custom sounds. They just let you do a custom paint scheme. And that's what we did. So what I want to do is talk about how we decided to do the ES44 in the first place, and then how we developed this paint scheme. So we started developing this custom run locomotive in late 2021, and when we first started off, we had no idea what we wanted to do. I was working with Val at Legacy Station, and we knew we wanted to do a custom run locomotive, but we didn't know what type or what the paint scheme would be. And we toyed around with a few different locomotives. At first it was a GP7, then a GP20, then an SD70, then an F3, and then finally we landed on the ES44, mainly because I really like the ES44. First of all, it's got a nice flat side that makes a good canvas for a custom paint job. Secondly, the ES44 has always been one of my favorite diesel locomotives. And lastly, the ES44 has always had a special connection to this channel, because the video that initially kind of put this channel on the map was my review of the Lionel Vision Line Evolution Hybrid ES44 back around 2010 or so. And so ultimately, that's why I decided to do the ES44. It just made sense. And then we had to decide on how to paint the locomotive. And again, we really didn't know what to do. We went through several variations. At first, it was going to be all black and just have the standard Eric's Trains logo on the side. But I really wasn't a fan of that. It kind of made me self-conscious to have Eric's Trains sprawled across the main part of the locomotive. I thought to myself, who's going to want a locomotive that has Eric's Trains as the main feature? I didn't feel right about it. And then it occurred to me, my layout is called the Appalachian Western Railroad, so why not do a fictional locomotive for that fictional railroad? And after that, it all came together. I said, okay, Appalachian Western, AWRX. Then we decided on a color scheme. I've always liked red and white, so that made the red and white choice easy. And then I worked with Val. She came up with the swoosh design. I think she got that from an existing locomotive somewhere, but I liked it, so we used it. And then I also worked with my friend Tony LaManna to do some of the graphical work. I wanted some safety striping, so we put that up there. That looks great. And we even put little red striping on the steps that looks cool. And so we just went back and forth between myself, Val, and Tony until we got something that I was happy with. I mean, it had to be my decision, and ultimately I ended up being happy with this. I really like how the white swoosh kind of comes up on top of the radiator housing. I think that looks great, and I love the font on the Appalachian Western and also the road number. and the road name under the cab. Now, the 2006 road number, I chose that because that was the year that I started my YouTube channel. It wasn't called Eric's Trains at that point. That wouldn't come for a few more years, but that's actually when I started the channel, and so I thought 2006 would be an appropriate road number for my first custom run locomotive. Anyway, once we were happy with the paint scheme, then we had to send it off to Lionel to let their artist work with it to make sure it would work on an ES44 model. And so they worked with it, and we went back and forth with them, a few tweaks back and forth until we got everything perfect. And then it went into production, and we just had to sit back and wait. And when it finally arrived in October, I got to tell you, I said it before in the previous videos, I was terrified. I was so nervous that I would get to Legacy Station and I would open the box only to find that Lionel got the color wrong. Instead of being red, it would be hot pink or orange or something like that. And so I can't tell you how relieved I was when it finally arrived and I opened the box and it looked exactly how I had envisioned it in my head. I was so happy. And then I went ahead and autographed all the boxes. I put stickers on the boxes and in the boxes, and we shipped them off to everybody who had ordered one. So it was quite the experience, and we're going to do it again this year because, like I said, we've got the NW2 and the Caboose coming out later this year, and I'll be autographing those and adding stickers and shipping those out. So that's going to be a really busy day and a whole other adventure on its own. Now, speaking of the upcoming NW2, that has a slightly different paint scheme than the ES44, and the reason is because at the time that we designed the ES44, I did not have a logo for the Appalachian Western, and so we did the swoosh and we did the Appalachian Western down here, but I really didn't have a logo. That happened after the design was submitted. A few months later, I was able to develop an official logo for the Appalachian and Western that I was really happy with, and that logo is going on all future custom runs, including the upcoming NW2 and Caboose. And although this ES44 doesn't have that logo, I actually think that works just fine because in real life, railroads have different paint schemes and different logos on different locomotives over time, and so it's totally plausible that this ES44 would have a different paint scheme than the NW2 and the Caboose. But yeah, I am so happy with this. It turned out better than I could have imagined, and I'm super excited about the upcoming custom runs as well. If we go in for some close-up shots, the front of the ES44 is really one of my favorite spots on this model because of that safety striping that I mentioned. It just turned out so well. It looks amazing. And then we've got this silver paint. That's kind of a default silver paint that Lionel does on a lot of their models, and so we had them use it here. And then we've got white accents on the outer handrails and the coupler cut bar and so forth. And then around the corner, just like all ES44s that Lionel makes, this does have the kinematic pilots, where the pilots are attached to the body rather than the trucks, but they do have this sprung mechanism so that they have a little bit of give to help them get around tighter curves. And I believe the minimum curve for this locomotive is 054, if I'm remembering correctly. And then here's those red stripes on the steps that I was mentioning. These were a very late addition, right before it went into production, and I'm so glad we did that because it makes this whole area pop. And then you can see more of this silver coloring on the underside and the handrails and the truck side frames and all that kind of stuff. We could have gone with a different color like black, I guess would be more traditional. But I've always liked the silver trucks on Santa Fe locomotives, and so that was the main influence in my decision to use silver here, and I think it worked out great. And I love the way the Appalachian Western font turned out right here. And it's really funny, when you're doing one of these custom paint jobs, a truly custom paint job that's not based on anything in the real world, it's incredibly easy to get bogged down and into the weeds about the smallest of details because at the time you think it's so important. And I remember spending so much time and effort trying to make sure the Appalachian and Western font was the right font and the right size and had the right tilt to it. And ultimately, you just sort of have to step back and laugh about it and say, look, most people aren't going to care about details that small. Just pick something that looks good and move on. And eventually that's what we did, and it ended up looking fantastic. So my recommendation to anybody who's doing a truly custom paint job is don't let yourself get bogged down in the details. Go with your gut, and most times you'll be right. And lastly, we've got the top of this radiator housing, which I'm sure the white balance on my camera is loving right now. And so the swoosh comes up on one side, curves around the top, and then goes back down the swoosh on the other side. And this is another one of my favorite spots on this locomotive. It just looks amazing. And of course, just like any other ES44, this piece can be removed to reveal the master controls for the locomotive, and then there's one of the 2 flywheels that power the locomotive. All right, so there you have it. Now you've seen all the details on this model, and hopefully you think it's as beautiful and cool as I do. Now, as I said, there were 150 of these made. I reserved 4 of them for myself. The locomotives were numbered from the factory, so for myself, I took numbers 1, 2, 3, and 8. Number 1 is still sealed in the box, and I have no plans to open it. Number 2 is what you're looking at right now. Number 3 was given to my friend Tony Lamanna because he helped with the design of the locomotive. And number 8 was sent to my girlfriend's dad up in Minnesota because he's a model train collector himself, and I got to tell you, he was thrilled to get one of these. And then the rest were sold to various Eric's Trains fans around the world. So thank you to everybody who bought one of these. It was so humbling. And thank you to everybody who has ordered one of the new NW2 switchers and or one of the new bay window cabooses. Like I said, those should be out later this year. Most likely we'll be doing another custom run or custom runs in 2024, although I don't know what those items will be just yet. I probably won't find out until maybe December of 23 or January of 24, but as soon as we nail down what we're going to do, I'll let you guys know. Anyway, I'm going to end this video by starting this thing up and taking it for a spin around the layout. So that's going to do it for now. I'm Eric Siegel. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the ride, and I'll see you next time.
This is the tower. Make a pull to the pit to top her off. Over.
Roger that. We're in position. Out.